You go into debt, the first thing you do is say, we can't spend any more money. I'm sorry, we just can't do it. We got to go back and get some beans and rice, honey. We're going to have beans and rice for a while. But not this government. We keep right on spending. I submit to you, that's not an accident. That's by design. They're trying to wreck this thing. They are driving the car off the cliff so that they can produce another system. And the system will tie in Christians into a one world government. That's where they're leading us. And so the chaos theory is order, chaos, one world government. That's where we're headed. And if we don't stand up and push back, if we don't stand up and get to the ramparts and tell them we don't want this and we will not have this, they will do it. They will do it. I want you to know the elite doesn't have very high opinion of you. They think all they have to do is just give you a little sugar and candy and you'll go back to sleep. Don't fall for the rope-a-dope, because it's coming. They're going to make the economy look good between now and November. And Barack is going to strut around looking like I did it. And we're going to say, okay, as long as my pocketbook is okay, let him have it. But it's not about your pocketbook. It's about our liberties. It's about our freedoms. I want to share a couple of things with you, and then I'll stop. These things are absolutely draconian and really outside the box and absolutely frightening if you don't get up and get involved. In this health care plan, the one that passed, before it passed, it was called H.R. 3200 in the House, House Resolution 3200. In House Resolution 3200, there was a segment on page 1000 to 1007. The title of the page was National Medical Registry Device. How many of you heard of that? All right. National Medical Registry Device. It is a microchip that will have all of your medical records on it. It is a chip, and they call it literally an implantable chip. Hello, Christians. Hello. And it is the Health and Human Services, Secretary of Health and Human Services, once this medical plan passed, according to H.R. 3200, she would have 3 years to implement it, to make sure that every American has a chip implanted. You didn't know that, did you? Because it was buried on page 1007. It is their intent to start with babies first. Every baby will be implanted the chip in their heel when they're born. The next group that they intend to implant it in are the baby boomers. They'll say to the baby boomers, you want your Medicaid, your Medicare, and your Social Security? Yes, I want mine. I deserve it. I paid into it. Yeah, give me mine. Well, you can't have it unless you take this chip. What? That's right, sir. You cannot have it until you take this chip. Well, I'll not take this chip. We'll not give you your check. Give me the chip. And that's what's going to happen. Then everybody else, they'll go after everybody else. Now, is this in the medical law that just passed? I'm plowing through it now to find it, but I bet it's there. I bet it's there. This chip will be tied to every other database that may have information about you. Your finances, your educational training, when you went to the doctor and how often you took a shot. It will be tied into your shopping habits. Do you know right now that there's a database that shows how you buy food and what you're buying? And they'll say, he drinks beer, had an accident. We're not going to cover that because he drinks beer. We can show a history of him buying beer all this time, you know. Doesn't that sound like Big Brother? That's what we're facing, men and women, while we're playing games. I'm telling you, I'm up and I'm angry, I'm mad, and I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to go to Washington, D.C. and declare every one of you in here are anti-constitutional, and I'm taking you to court. Can I go with you? And I'm taking you to court. And guess what? The cameras will lock in. They say, this conservative black guy is down here talking about suing everybody. You doggone right I am. Let me tell you, I know I've gone on a little longer than I wanted to. I wanted to take my time tonight because I wanted to communicate to you that I'm dead serious. I'm not here because you guys necessarily like me. I'm here because I think God called me to this moment. That's right. He called me to this moment for such a time as this. I wasn't looking for this. I was happy preaching and teaching in my church. I got out there and they started calling me names and throwing mud on me. I said, that's all right. They did that to Jesus too. What's going to save this nation, men and women, is our return to our founding principles and our Judeo-Christian heritage. And we cannot be intimidated not to speak our faith. I'm not. I'm not for this reason, because our founding fathers believed that the greatness of this nation is tied directly into our religious heritage. James Madison said this: limited government alone is inadequate for our nation. Limited government alone is inadequate for our nation. Limited government without the moral compass to guide how we do governance ends up with Bernie Madoff, Enron, and the greed we see down on Wall Street Avenue. We've already seen what this country will look like when the moral compass is not applied. Bernie Madoff appealed to our greed, and he ripped off Americans. Enron took all of the retirement of its employees and paid fat salaries to the corporate leaders. They didn't have a moral compass. James Madison, our founding father, said limited government alone is inadequate for our nation. John Adams says this: our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to govern any other state. George Washington said this: reason and experience both forbid us to expect that national morality can prevail in exclusion of religious principles. Amen. That's what George Washington said. Benjamin Franklin said this. He says, only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. Only. That's an exclusive language. He is saying, narrowly speaking, only religious people can exercise liberty. Otherwise, if you give me liberty and I don't have religious frame to frame it up, I say, I got a right to come down there and take your money. I'm free to do that. But if you frame it with morality, I can't take what's yours. It's wrong. Do you hear what our founding fathers are saying, men and women? And so every time we say we can't say anything about religion, and no, we can't, what we're doing is violating the very principles that made this nation great. If we're going to rescue this nation, it has to be rescued with our Judeo-Christian frame right up in front, with the principles that made this nation great. Here's what the Bible says. The Bible says this: righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a disgrace to any people. That's what the Bible says. It is our righteousness. And righteousness not defined by man, but defined by God. What are the principles that made this nation great? Personal responsibility, self-determination, fiscal responsibility, limited government, individual freedom, religious freedom, free speech, and the right to bear arms.